Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Lincoln Journal-Star's Life in the Red podcast. I'm Luke Mullin alongside Amie just once again, and we got a jam-packed episode, I think, for you today. We'll break down the win over North Dakota, look ahead to Georgia Southern, and of course, we want to talk a lot about that big volleyball match that happened last night up in Omaha. Nebraska-Creighton, one of those annual, great volleyball matches that we see every year, but it's taken on a new importance, when we see them fill the basketball arenas. They did it here in PBA, set a regular season record a few years ago, and just broke it last night. You were there, I guess. Just what were your overall thoughts of kind of the atmosphere and everything?
It was unreal. It was mostly red, but there was a lot of blue there too. At times there were dueling, let's go Jays, go Big Red chants, which was really cool. Just to be in an environment that not only just cares so much about their team, it just cares about volleyball enough in general to go to a match at 5 o'clock on a Wednesday, braving all of the road construction and the rush hour traffic, and just to be a part of something so special is really cool.
Absolutely. And the record attendance, by the way, 15,797, regular season record. And I think, what is it, top 15 or
13?
Or 13.
The top 13 matches in terms of attendance for NCAA volleyball only. Regular season matches have been held in either Lincoln or Omaha, which is really cool.
Absolutely. And of course, the teams didn't disappoint. It was a great match too. And Nebraska really got rolling early. I think that second set, they were on fire. Creighton didn't have a lot of response, to the different runs Nebraska would get on. And then, that third set, really tight. Nebraska had the chance, maybe to get a sweep. And then Creighton, they pull it out. They come storming back in the fourth. Just what did you see kind of in that decisive fifth set that let Nebraska pull ahead? Yeah,
before that, the second and the third set could have gone either way. They were both really close. They were both 2-point wins. Second set for Nebraska, third set for Creighton. The fourth set, Nebraska really looked lost. And to quote Lindsay Krause, Creighton visibly wanted it more than they did. And going into that fifth set, Lindsay, when she was speaking after the match, she was saying, we need to show that we want it more than they did. We need to dig deep. And that's what they did. And she came out on fire, as did Hayden Kubik, the freshman fourth pin, who this was really her first true test. She played in like 2 sets, I think, so far this season, one in 2 different matches. But she played in every set and, looked a little lost when she first got in there, but she really came into her own. And, that's what they needed. Sometimes you just can't rely on the same person every night. And they came through, and it was electric. And I honestly didn't know who was going to win that fifth set until Nebraska pulled away there at the end to clinch it.
Yeah, super back and forth. But I think something we need to bring up, and I definitely noticed it because I was watching on TV at home. They switched the broadcast from FS1, the national broadcast, bump it over to FS2 for a regular season baseball game. And it was kind of crazy because, really, you don't see this a lot in any sport, really. It's always the game that's currently going on gets precedence to, whatever's coming up next. Because, of course, the fans who have been watching for, an hour and a half, they're invested. They want to see the end of the matchup. So, honestly, it's a discussion like, did it only get bumped because it's volleyball? Is that kind of what went through Fox minds when they did that? So,
full disclosure, I emailed Fox. I have not heard back yet. It is 1:09 on a Thursday. So, we'll see if they email me back. They might not, but I asked. I was like, is there a contractual obligation for these two, middling NL West teams that no one really cares about right now? I didn't say that in my email, but I did say that in my column. And regardless if there is a contractual obligation or not, doesn't the Big East also have a contract with Fox Sports?
Yeah.
So, look, obviously MLB and Big East are not on equal playing fields there, but how embarrassing. How embarrassing for a sport that you're trying to grow a TV audience for, and you pull it right as they're going into the fifth set.
Yeah.
Like, block out enough time to air the whole game. It's embarrassing. And I said that in my column, and I stand by it. It's embarrassing.
Well, yeah, I think it's just, it's like, especially for the average consumer too. I mean, it's like you're completely turning off, a large percentage of your customer base. The people that were invested in that match, and like I said, I mean, you see this all the time. Football, basketball, whatever it might be. Even if it's not a close game in the fourth quarter, you'll see it all the time with ESPN. Obviously a different broadcast network. They'll bump games to ESPNU. They'll bump it to ESPN News. Let the game run its course. Let the people who've been watching enjoy it. And I just thought it was a major mistake. A landmark regular season volleyball game. Obviously a major hot topic here in Nebraska, and they definitely dropped the ball on that one.
Absolutely. And I hope that Fox Sports says something. I don't know how many complaints they got. I'm sure they got a lot of complaints from within the state of Nebraska. I'm not sure how many people were watching outside.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a nationally televised match, so you think there'll be eyeballs elsewhere. But we'll find out. Or maybe we won't.
Yeah, I'm imagining like BTN, moving away from a, Penn State Nebraska volleyball matchup, to some, what's their like diner series that they do, Big Ten Eats or whatever. I'm imagining something like that, and it's just crazy to think about a little bit. Yeah. But let's focus on the positives. Back to it. Just kind of what this shows about Nebraska being a volleyball state. And for me personally, this was a great match to watch because I covered high school volleyball here for about 3 years. And a lot of the players on the court were players I got to know, through their high school days here. For Creighton, Nora Sis, Papillion La Vista grad, Skylar McCune, she got in the match as well from Gretna. And for Nebraska, the Waverly contingent, Whitney Lonstein, Becca Alec, Ani Evans, and of course, Lindsay Krause from Omaha Skutt. Especially, I mean, these are two top 20 volleyball teams. Of course, Nebraska recruits nationally. They get, number 1, number 2 recruiting classes every year. But at the same time, I mean, when you have those in-state players, contributing, obviously, we hear this a lot. It means a little extra, fighting for their hometown, home school that they've, grown up watching and seeing their whole lives. So I just thought it was fantastic to see all those Nebraskans out there. The passion that we saw in the match too. I just have to think that played a big role.
Yeah, for sure. Regardless of if they played or if they didn't, between the two teams, there are 11 Nebraska natives on the rosters. 11. And a lot of them played really well. So it just goes to show just how special this is, and it's part of why, Omaha gets the Final Four so often, because volleyball is, I mean, to quote John Cook, is a state treasure here. And he couldn't be more accurate in that assessment. And it's not just, with Nebraska and with Creighton. I mean, UNK and Wayne State are both ranked in the top 10 for the Central and Division II. And then UNO is 4-1 right now. Like, it's not just at the top level. It's going all the way down through all the college ranks and into high school. And it's really special.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, a total top-down approach. I think we have a fantastic club scene here in Nebraska as well. A couple of different club organizations that do a great job. And like you said, I mean, high school, middle school, it's just part of kind of the overall atmosphere of the state. A lot of girls just grow up playing it, do a great job. And, like I said, covering high school volleyball, it's not just that they all go to Nebraska and Creighton. You see, players go across the whole country, Division I, Division II, whatever it might be. Nebraska volleyball products have gone all places, everywhere, and they've succeeded. They've done a great job for it, and I think this event was a great one to kind of showcase just kind of the special atmosphere that we have around volleyball here in Nebraska.
Yeah, and it continues the cycle, right? Because there were so many young girls in the stands last night, and when they can see, how important this sport is. Maybe they, go and play volleyball and end up being really good. And, maybe 15 years from now, we'll see, I was 3 when I went to this match, and I fell in love with, like the cycle keeps continuing, and that's not lost on anybody.
Definitely. So we'll look forward to breaking down a few more of the important volleyball matches that are coming up in a couple weeks.
Stanford next week.
Yes, most definitely. A lot of eyes will be on that one. Those programs might have a little history.
A little bit.
All right, well, let's get into football a little bit. We're a few days removed from the North Dakota game, but obviously still fresh in our memory a little bit. Worth breaking down a few of the important different things that went on. First thing that stands out to me offensively, we saw the same fast start. They're humming out there on the first drive. Thompson's throwing the ball. They march down the field, and you're thinking, okay, this is the type of offense you want to see against an FCS team come out there ready to play. Well, Thompson gets hit with a sack fumble. Nebraska misses a field goal. And the defense did a good job in that first half. 4 straight punts for North Dakota. That final drive, they drive down the field. 7-7 tie game at halftime. Not a lot of possession for Nebraska. And it was a tense halftime, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was a punch in the gut for Nebraska and the fans in attendance, some of whom booed at halftime. And that's not what you want, right? You want the momentum going into halftime. And the drive that North Dakota pieced together was as good as you're going to see. And, it woke up the team a little bit. Like, Garrett Nelson was talking at halftime about, if we just do the things that we need to do, we're going to be okay, all of that stuff. And it, proved to be right, but it was a little scary for a while.
Definitely. And, the second half turnaround was pretty quick as well. Same thing. Come out of the halftime locker room, great first drive, lead them down the field for a touchdown. You get the sack fumble, another field goal, 10-point lead, but they allow North Dakota, to creep back in it. Thompson throws an interception. The turnover battle, obviously, so important. But 17-17, third quarter, it's really not where Nebraska thought they would be, and they needed a response. And fortunately for the Huskers, they did get it. Defense got those stops at the end. Obviously, that huge Thompson pass to Trey Palmer, from deep in their own territory. Yep, that stands out as a big play that led to the go-ahead touchdown. And I mean, when you look at that 21-point margin of victory, it's deceiving about how close that game was, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. For me, when I look to see how close a game was, I look at the first 3.5 quarters or so, because sometimes at the end of games, especially against undersized FCS teams, the score can be a little misleading. They eventually get worn down, get tired. They've got less scholarship athletes available, that type of stuff. So, but yeah, for the first 3 quarters, it didn't look very favorable for Nebraska, but they pulled it out, and I'm interested to see what happens this weekend.
Absolutely. And we learned a little bit more about some of the different positions that were maybe question marks going into the season or even after that Northwestern game. And top thing that stands out, Anthony Grant, it's his job as a starting running back, and he kind of put the team on his back at moments in that one. Not those touchdown runs. It wasn't necessarily the product of a big hole that he could run through. His cutbacks, his vision, his ability to go all over the field. That's what he showed against North Dakota. Yeah,
he showed flashes of that against Northwestern, but he really showed that he can be that dominant lead back last week. And if it's going to rain on Saturday, last I checked, again, we're recording at 1-ish on a Thursday. It's an 80% chance of rain on Saturday. They're really going to need to use him, and he could go for 200. He might. If it's raining, he could go for 200, and that'd be fun.
Yeah, and it depends how much they want to work in A.J. Allen, too, which was, maybe not something we would have really anticipated going into the year. You get this freshman, obviously a guy that running backs coach Brian Applewhite was very eager to recruit to Nebraska, but, I mean, you still had a lot of different guys in the backfield mix, and through 2 weeks, I mean, Ramir hasn't had a touch. Yant, I think, has had maybe 2 or 3. Gabe Irvin in the same boat, so... Allen, he did a great job at the end of the game, but, it is a tired defense at that point. What I'll be interested to see is, can they sub him in, first, second quarter, be that effective change of pace back, alongside Grant, because obviously Grant's the top dog. Allen's done enough to get in that number 2 conversation, but there's a lot of guys right behind him eager to get their chance too.
Yeah, it's a super deep room, and, the cream is rising to the top. But yeah, I like Grant and I like Allen. I think that the 2 different types of backs that they are, the different types of traits that they bring is complementary to what the run game needs to do moving forward.
Definitely. And at wide receiver, we've also seen kind of the top guy really emerge. Not maybe necessarily a surprise. Obviously, you got to see Trey Palmer at LSU as well, but I mean, he's kind of fit in like a glove to this Nebraska offense. That downfield threat. We've seen him, maybe even running even faster than Thompson was anticipating a few throws behind him a little bit, because he just has that burning speed, and he does a great job route running too. I mean, he gets in and out of his breaks really quick.
Yeah, very precise. And it doesn't hurt when your position coach is someone you're familiar with at your last stop too. Helps a little bit, I would imagine.
Definitely. But the only other thing on offense, the O-line, were they good enough against North Dakota? I think, in my opinion, probably not as good as you'd like to see. I think they wised up a little bit in the second half. Gave Thompson a little more time in the pocket in those different passing situations, and a little bit more area to run. But again, this was kind of the question mark heading into the year, and through 2 weeks, there's still a lot of questions about that O-line.
Yeah, and look, do I think it was good enough? No. But they're also working through some of their chemistry issues too, right? Because this unit hadn't played much together, if at all, right, until this season. So they're working out some of the quirks, but they need to work it out quickly, because once the rest of the Big Ten schedule gets here, it's going to be pretty ugly if they don't figure it out.
Yeah, and I got the chance to talk to Teddy Prowaska on Monday. And I thought what was really interesting, he shared a lot kind of about his mental approach. And what he was saying was, just the first half, he's just felt a little uncertain. Maybe some of that is coming back from injury. But again, this is a guy playing left tackle, a premier position on that O-line, and he's only had a handful of starts there. So he's still working his way up, a real talent there at left tackle. And we see that a lot of the other positions on the offensive line too, guys who maybe even haven't even had a full season starting at that position. So it takes time to get that stuff sorted out. They're still working on it, and that's kind of the takeaway on that one. But on the defense, we're kind of still seeing the same stuff. That tackling that we saw against Northwestern, major issue, I think, especially in the first half. A lot of arm tackles going missing, not taking the right angle to the ball, containing where they need to. And that's led to a response. We've heard about this a lot from the different coaches this week in practice. They're doing ones against ones because you get a different type of speed, especially for the defense when you're going up against the top offensive unit.
Yeah, but Clay Helton, who we'll talk about him a little bit more, spoke about earlier this week, Georgia Southern, they're live tackling in some of those periods, and here at Nebraska, they're not. They're working on, leverages and all of the other things that go into tackling. So we'll see how that helps. But maybe the answer is live tackling in practice, but I don't know what they'd need to see in order to make that change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, an interesting one for sure, and it's kind of a tricky one because there's no perfect solution. Obviously, if you do live tackling, there's more of an injury risk. But if you're not going live, are they ready to be up to that full game speed? So we'll see if that makes a difference here on Saturday. Also be interested to see the defensive line and secondary rotation, because that stuff shifted a little bit from the first game to the second game, especially the defensive line. We had Colton Feist and Ty Robinson, just a ton of snaps there against Northwestern, really cut back against North Dakota, probably a little bit more in that 30-40 snap range you'd want to see. Stephon Wynn, I think, made a lot bigger impact than he did against Northwestern as well. So is that a sign of, things will keep increasing for him and maybe decreasing for the other guys? I don't think so. I think they're just trying to get everybody kind of on the same level. And that's important in the secondary as well. You've got Miles Farmer, Quentin Newsom. These guys have hardly had a snap or even a series where they haven't been on the field for the entire time, which, first, second game, probably fine to get away with, but when you get deeper in the season, they're going to be worn down if they don't figure out that rotation.
Yeah, balance is necessary. Because if you've got a tired secondary, that's has the potential to be ugly.
Mm-hmm. And other takeaways from this North Dakota game, lost the turnover battle for the second straight week. Major issue, almost another special teams miscue. Wyatt Luer almost touching that, blocked punt. Could have been a really bad giveaway there. But number one thing that stands out to me, time of possession battle. North Dakota had over 8 minutes, Northwestern had over 8 minutes more than Nebraska. North Dakota even increased on that, 12 more minutes time of possession. I mean, that's almost another whole entire quarter that they held the ball longer than Nebraska.
Yeah, Nebraska needs to figure that out. And granted, with this week potentially being, inclement weather conditions, how much are we going to read into that, just because the game plan changes so much when it's rainy and windy and all of those things. So that'll be interesting, I think, for this weekend. But moving forward, when it's not raining, that's something to definitely look at.
Well, it's going to be interesting, too, because the weather conditions are going to affect both of these teams because they're both tempo-oriented, pass-heavy teams. So let's get into the Georgia Southern breakdown a little bit. Forget about the old option offense that they used to run, because Clay Helton, a guy a lot of you college football fans will recognize, time at USC, a great offensive mind for sure. He brings in kind of the spread style pass offense. And the quarterback, Kyle Van Treese, transferred from Buffalo, played here at Memorial Stadium last year. He's a guy who really fits that spread offense well, threw for I think about 350 yards, 4 touchdowns, some light work in that Week 1 win over Morgan State. Georgia Southern really rolled to a big one. And so this offense, it's an offense that's built to throw the ball. They're going to push the tempo too. So it's going to be a question of, can Nebraska's defense, line up quickly, read the formations, because it was a lot different. North Dakota, they were huddling, they were taking their time, they were shifting. Yeah, so there was a lot of differences, compared last week to this week. So it's going to be a different challenge for the defense.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens, right? If they've got time, because Van Treese and Helton like to push it a little bit, that opens up the pass rush. That's a big matchup I'll be looking at this weekend, just how well or not so well the edge rushers can do there. Can they bring him down once, twice, maybe more? But again, if the weather throws a wrench into that, then the run defense is going to be incredibly important and not so great so far.
Yeah, and for the edge rushers too, Georgia Southern, experienced offensive line coming back for their 5 starters from a year ago return. So I think they're pretty good in the pass protection, but the run game, we saw last week Georgia Southern against Morgan State, they rotated 3 different backs in, but that's going to be a lot different defensive front than they saw a week ago. So it'll be interesting to see, can the Georgia Southern run game get going? But an interesting stat, defensively for Georgia Southern, last year, opponents only converted 37.5% of their third downs against Georgia Southern. Morgan State was just 2 for 13 on third down last week. So a very good third down defense. Does that mean blitzing? Does it mean dropping back? Obviously, it'll be very situational, but that's been a challenge for Nebraska. I think they're a little bit, I don't know the exact stat, but kind of in the 40-ish% range on their third down conversions. Which, if they're going to be able to build those long drives, keep a hold of the ball, they're going to need to pick up right there where they left off.
Yeah, and you can't just rely on Trey Palmer making these acrobatic contested catches. Like, you're going to have to draw some things up and not just rely on luck and just sheer athleticism. Mm-hmm. He talked about he's getting tired. He can only run so many plays in a row before he has to take a break. So his conditioning is also something that they have to factor into all of this.
Definitely. And I think it's about time for our Husker Hot Topic. And as we get into this one, it's important to remind ourselves, this Georgia Southern team finished very poorly in the Sun Belt last year, 3-9 record. Obviously, it's kind of similar to Nebraska, where they've got a new quarterback, a new staff, not entire staff here in Nebraska, but a new offensive system that they've got in place. So there's a lot of moving pieces for this Georgia Southern team. We'll expect a pretty good challenge, because they do have the athletes. They do have the ability to push Nebraska. But at the same time, our question for the week: what would another, let's say, really close game, perhaps just close, but if it's really close, what does that mean for Nebraska's season if Northwestern, North Dakota, Georgia Southern, 3 games that were really on the easier end, perhaps the easiest on their schedule, are all extremely competitive.
It worries me for the future. Can they make it through the Big Ten season, right? They played so many close games last year against really talented teams. If they're playing close games against the teams that are supposed to be easier on your schedule, yikes.
Yeah, and for me, it's like it's a confidence thing too, right?
Yeah.
Because that Northwestern game is a real kind of unique one. The Ireland thing, and starting a week early, but that didn't give them a lot of confidence, and we saw that against North Dakota. You don't go into halftime tied 7-7 against an FCS team if you're a confident group from top to bottom. Which I'm not saying everyone's not confident. It's just kind of a collective confidence. That's a good way of putting it. Obviously, it's up to the leaders, Coach Frost especially, to kind of cultivate that confidence, but nothing's going to make you more confident than going out there and playing well. And
blowing the doors off a team you're supposed to blow the doors off of. I think the line is like 22 last I looked.
Yeah.
Like, that's what Nebraska should be doing. Like, they have the pieces to do it. They just need to come together as a team and do it. And like Scott Frost said last week, not a good team yet.
Exactly. And, the thing is, yes, you need to be tested in close games. You need to have that adversity. But at the same time, you go through it so much. I mean, they could easily be numb of moments like these by the end of the year if you're in a halftime dogfight every time. And then let's say it goes bad, later down the season. If you're in the halftime locker room down 14, if you're not a confident team, they might just roll over. So it's a case, these early season games, you really got to get your feet wet. You really got to get that experience that you need down the road. And through 2 weeks, I don't think we've seen what we needed to see from Nebraska in terms of that. So maybe that'll change against Georgia Southern. But if it doesn't, if it's a very close game, it does not inspire a lot of confidence that the rest of the season will go as well as they might have thought it would heading into the year.
Yeah, and doesn't forebode well for next week against Oklahoma.
Definitely, yeah. That's a pretty good opponent coming to town.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was so much sarcasm if that wasn't blatantly obvious.
They'll have to be ready for that one. So let's get into the score predictions. Let's say, how close do we think it's going to be? I'll go first, and I'll say Nebraska 38, Georgia Southern 24. A lot under the spread, in my opinion. I think it's going to be a lot closer, maybe a 2-touchdown, 2-score game, depending on how it shakes out. Just because I like Van Treese's ability. I think, it's going to be a case of, can Nebraska bring the pressure? Can they force him to progress through his reads a lot quicker than he'd like to? What will the weather, force them to run the ball a little more? But at the same time, he's a playmaking quarterback. I think he's going to throw a couple touchdowns, keep the pressure on that secondary at times. And for Nebraska, I think they really need to get, in my opinion, at least 21 points at halftime, because this is a team that you can hand the ball off to Anthony Grant now. We're kind of at that point in the year where you have that guy, that workhorse, that you can lean on a little bit. So time of possession is going to be important, but at the same time, they have that tempo. They want to strike fast. Can they actually put it all together? String together multiple touchdown drives. Really, we haven't seen that through 8 quarters. I'm waiting to see a time where they get 2-3 scoring drives in a row. Perhaps it'll be this week. I think it's their best chance really to get tuned up. So 38-24 is what I'm saying. What are you going with?
I'm a little more optimistic than you this week. I have down Nebraska 42, Georgia Southern 17. I think that, like I've talked about ad nauseum so far, I think the weather will play a factor. If it does indeed rain, I think Anthony Grant is going to go off again. And Georgia Southern's just going to have a really hard time containing him. I foresee a couple touchdowns, maybe a few more from him, maybe one from A.J. Allen. Casey Thompson will still be very effective, I think. I think this is going to be the game that they need to step forward.
Yeah, so bring your ponchos, bring your rain jackets if you're going to be there. 6:30 Saturday night, Memorial Stadium. Huskers take on Georgia Southern. We'll have all the live coverage. We'll get you our rapid reaction from the field, of course. Amie will have her column. I'll be covering the game. Look forward to us on Twitter as well. We'll have all the content online. It's a big one. Obviously Oklahoma coming up, but really they need to get right this week, and we'll see if that's the case or not. So thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Life in the Red. Hope you enjoyed the volleyball coverage and, of course, our breakdown of North Dakota looking ahead to Georgia Southern. We'll see you there 6:30 Saturday night. For Amie Just, I've been Luke Mullin. Thank you all for tuning in this week.